Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we go to the Naval Academy to see a long-held tradition of helping the community. Plus, the B-21 Raider finally rolls out. And a record year for women graduating from the Marine Corps' ruling infantry officer course. Finally, we go inside an Army lab that helps you stay warm in the colds. You're not going to want to miss it. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon on this episode of Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. Midshipmen at the Naval Academy have a very special way to help families in Maryland. We went on campus to take a look at the Giving Tree.
This is the Giving Tree. It's a program that we do in combination with Salvation Army, run by Six Company. And we are able to donate gifts to 500 kids in the Annapolis area. Salvation Army, they give us the angels, and we have a huge ceremony where the soup and the Daunt attend, and then people come, faculty, staff, midshipmen, they come, they take an angel, and they bring back a gift for a kid in the Annapolis area. This is the 32nd year that the Academy's been doing this through Six Company. So it's been a really amazing tradition that I'm really honored to be a part of. We get the wishes by working with Salvation Army. I've been in communication with Captain Ward. Go to the Salvation Army, pick up the wishes, and then Six Company's been amazing. They help put up the tree, put the wishes together, decorate the tree, and then it's ready for midshipmen and faculty and staff to grab a wish from the tree.
In Annapolis, we have a lot of families that find themselves in great need, whether it's lack of resources, where they're having to funnel all of their income towards rent and utilities, food. We try and have a wraparound service where we can help them with those things as well. But at Christmas time, it's such a relief to families to offer this, to provide these gifts for their kids, to offer some relief while they're trying to make ends meet in other ways.
Behind us is the tree with all of the gifts. Since pickup's tomorrow, there's still some gifts that need to be brought in, but this is almost everything we have. Tomorrow, they'll all be brought to the Salvation Army and distributed next week.
The Salvation Army relies on these sorts of programs to remind people that all year long, we're helping our community to stay in their homes, to hold down jobs, to be able to feed their families and clothe their families. And programs like this allow us to remind the community that they have a hand in that. So it's very important for the Salvation Army, these partnerships like with the Naval Academy and others, to support the community at Christmas.
I think what really touches me is just the way that our community comes together in order to make these gifts possible. You hear stories about teams pooling together money, going to the store together. Squads will do squad outings where they all go to the mall and then each get a gift for the kid.
We're always looking to grow. So that is something that as we share this story and spread the word about Angel Tree, we hope that more people would consider taking a tag from a tree at the mall, taking a tag from online, and shopping for those children. We're still in need. Our distribution is next week, and we still have a few hundred kids that need gifts for this Christmas. To adopt an angel from our Angel Tree, you can go to Facebook and find the Salvation Army Annapolis. We have many links posted there every day about adopting online. You can also go, if you're here local in Annapolis, to Westfield Mall. There's trees there, and those are the fastest, easiest ways to adopt an angel for us.
And now for Defense Dollars. The U.S. Army has made the largest helicopter award in 40 years. Textron's Bell helicopter has won the U.S. Army's competition to build the future long-range assault aircraft. Bell will build its V-280 Valor. The deal for the next generation helicopter is worth up to $1.3 billion and is set to replace some 2,000 Black Hawk utility helicopters and about 1,200 Apache attack helicopters around the year 2030. The aircraft, called Flora, will not serve as a one-to-one replacement for existing aircraft, but it will take over the role of the Black Hawk as well as the Apache. And we've finally seen it. The U.S. Air Force unveiled the B-21 Raider in Palmdale, California. The event was the first time the stealthy 6th-generation aircraft has been seen in public. It's the first bomber unveiling for the USA since 1988, when the B-2 Spirit rolled out. The B-2 Spirits and B-1 Lancers are now aging, and the B-21 will be half of the service's bomber capability.
What the Air Force wants is a 2-bomber fleet of just B-52s that have been refurbished with a slate of brand new engines by Rolls-Royce and the B-21. At least 100 of those, probably more.
During the unveiling, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke about what the plane will bring to the United States' arsenal.
Let's talk about the B-21's range. No other long-range bomber can match its efficiency. It won't need to be based in theater. It won't need logistical support to hold any target at risk. The Raider is designed to deliver both conventional and nuclear munitions with formidable precision.
Manufacturer Northrop Grumman says the digital bomber will be the backbone of the fleet. The name Raider harkens back to the Doolittle Raid of World War II, which helped the U.S. win in the Pacific. 6 Raiders are in various stages of final assembly at Northrop Grumman's plant in California. And that's it from around the industry. When we return, we see how many women have been completing a grueling combat course. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. How many women have now graduated from the Marine Corps' Infantry Officer course? Marine Corps Times reporter Irene Lowenson crunched the numbers and brings us this update.
More women than ever are poised to lead Marine combat platoons. The Marine Corps confirmed that a record 6 women graduated from the grueling Marine Infantry Officer course in the most recent fiscal year. According to data from the Marine Corps, a total of 12 women have completed the course, while 39 have attempted it. Now, this course is notoriously rigorous. It's 13 weeks in Quantico, Virginia, and it prepares officers to lead infantry and other units like reconnaissance and snipers. Even though the service opened ground combat jobs to women in 2016, Marines in those billets have remained overwhelmingly male. According to data from the Center for a New American Security, there are only a few hundred women in combat arms. In early 2020, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General David Berger, said he wanted more women attending the infantry officer course. The first 3 women who attempted the course back in 2014 were dropped after being unable to keep up with the hikes. It wasn't until September 2017 that the first woman graduated from the course. She went on to lead an infantry platoon. The second female Marine graduated in 2018. No women graduated the following 2 years. Then, in 2021, 4 women graduated from infantry officer course after 7 attempted it. In fiscal year 2022, it was 6 out of 8. As of November, there were no women currently in the course, but it's likely that more women will attempt it in the coming year.
Thank you, Irene. And now for military headlines. We start in Romania. Romanian and U.S. forces ramped up training in Transylvania recently. Operation Justice Sword is an annual validation exercise for the 280th Romanian Mechanized Battalion. This year, they invited members of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 101st Airborne Division. The soldiers have been in Europe since the summer.
This training is great for NATO because it helps strengthen our partnership with our Romanian allies. So both the United States and Romanian soldiers, for the first time, we got a chance to gather these particular soldiers to work as a team and train and prepare to defend.
The training helped the soldiers learn about each other's tactics and gain interoperability, the ability for allied militaries to communicate and work seamlessly alongside each other.
The benefits that this interoperability brings to NATO and our allies is allowing our force, the United States Army, to share our knowledge with an ally and then also get knowledge from them as well. Specific here in the Cincu training area, we're working on their terrain, which is a different kind of terrain than what we're used to. We get to see how they work in their terrain and how they are comfortable. And then it also allows us to maneuver on different terrain as well to better our capabilities.
And that wraps up our military headlines. When we return, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack tells us about credit card balance transfers and their benefits. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks about the benefits of credit card balance transfers.
If you're like many Americans, you're paying high interest on your credit card debt. According to LendingTree.com, the average rate on credit cards today is 22%. Even with great credit, you could be paying 18% and rising. This makes it seem like you'll never be debt-free, but you do still have options. Debt consolidation or a balance transfer is a great way to streamline and pay one monthly payment rather than several. You could also lower your interest rate, which will lower what you pay monthly. Just apply for a card that has a lower interest rate than your current card and transfer your high-rate debt to that card. Try to find one with no annual fees, zero balance transfer fees, and maybe even better rewards than what you're currently getting. Do the research, shop and compare to get the best deal for you. Once you transfer your balance to your new card, try not to undo the good you've done yourself by racking up debt on your old card. Now that you've given yourself some relief, stick to a healthy budget and you'll tackle that debt in no time.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, set yourself a waypoint for Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps Times.com and DefenseNews.com. And to be the first one in the office with the latest headlines, sign up for our Early Bird Brief to get stories delivered in your inbox each weekday. And it's even in audio. Check out the podcast version out now. When we come back, we go inside an Army laboratory that develops the fabrics that keep you warm and dry in the field. Stick around. Welcome back. Any ground pounder can tell you that you get the worst of both worlds when you're rucking in the cold. It's blistering hot while walking, but the sweat and water makes it nearly impossible to rest before the freezing air catches you. The Army's Combat Capabilities Development Command Soldier Center in Natick, Massachusetts, has labs that study exactly how to keep you warm when it's cold and wet. We visited earlier this year for this inside look.
We've all seen the pictures from U.S. Army Ranger School. Exhausted hopefuls crossing a river that is waist deep or even deeper. Instructors give them tips on staying dry and staying warm. Reporter Sarah Sicard recently visited the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine in Natick, Massachusetts. We got a look at the tools scientists use to make decisions about your uniforms.
So during study conditions, it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so rather cold. It's made to replicate what Army Rangers might encounter down in their swamp training phase, so rather cold. It's also maybe like walking into the ocean in Maine, so it's a pretty cold temperature. And right now, the pool is lowered to have our volunteer to come up to about waist level.
So what does waist deep height indicate when you're doing your research?
Waist height is what a Army Ranger would typically encounter during training. If you remember out the study, we're going at 3 different immersion depths, so kind of at the legs, kind of at the waist, and towards the chest. And as the water comes up higher, as you can imagine, there's more opportunity for heat to be lost. So that's why we're looking at these 3 different ranges. And all this data that we collect from these different ranges is handed to our modeling teams. They develop thermoregulatory models that help us predict what their core temperature might be, so their risk of hypothermia at various levels. So all this data goes into translation into decision aids.
And now that we know how the pool works, it's time to get a soldier in there.
Today, the data that we're collecting is skin temperature and core temperature, and then we'll collect some perceptual information from them. How cold do they feel? Is it comfortable, uncomfortable? And then when they're exercising, how hard does it feel to them?
So currently, Lieutenant Colonel Rowe is hooked up to our metabolic cart. This is a pretty standard piece of equipment you'll see in exercise research, but what this does is it measures oxygen consumption. So you can imagine if he's exercising at a given intensity, there's a certain amount of oxygen that he's uptaking to produce energy for his exercise. And then you can also imagine as he increases in exercise intensity, that oxygen consumption will go up. And that might even go up more if the water level goes higher. There's more resistance he has to work against. So really what oxygen uptake tells us is how hard the task is that our volunteer is currently performing.
So this is 35 kilograms or a 77-pound rucksack. It's actually lighter than most loads that people would carry if they were deployed in those field situations. So when he's walking in the water, he has to push the water, every time he steps forward, he's pushing water away from in front of him. So the speed is actually really slow compared to if you were walking on land, but it's based on the speeds that they would walk through the swamp and getting to an equivalent metabolic rate that's typical for that activity.
So the scientists have done the experiments and crunched the numbers. What have they learned about clothing insulation?
Cold thermoregulatory model that's been made into mobile applications or desktop applications for a number of scenarios. So the cold weather ensemble decision aid, what to wear if you wear too much clothing in the Arctic and you overheated, it'll tell you that. If you have not enough clothing on and your hands or feet are going to get cold, it will give you that information. Hypothermia is typically pretty hard to induce unless you have some aspect of wetness in there. So a partial immersion, sweating, precipitation, full immersion falling through the ice. So an example of that from the same model is the probability of survival decision aid used by the Coast Guard. So that's predicting survival at sea for how long. So that's a much longer exposure for people, how long the Coast Guards needs to run their search efforts. Insulation in your clothing is almost entirely due to how much air is trapped in the clothing. So if you have a hard shell jacket, but there's an air gap underneath, you can't count the fact that when you're still, there's a really big amount of air in there because it's going to move around all the time.
JADC2 is the future of communication and planning for the military, and the recent topic of one of our live webcasts. Here's part of that conversation.
So JADC2 is one of those topics that's a big discussion point in the defense world. Everyone kind of has their own vision of what it is and how it's going to work. So why don't you give us a quick big picture overview of what you see its goals as and how it could change military operations?
Sure. So JADC2 is the National Defense Strategy vision for achieving machine-to-machine connections and collaboration across all domains. And so what that is, how do we field solutions that will enable that collaborative, all domain allies and services to work together and realize the synergies from those tools that we realize every day in our day-to-day lives through global commerce.
I think at the core of JADC2 is communication, right? And so how would you describe how communication is done today, military communication, and how that sets up the need for JADC2? What will change, and what's the difference in situational outcomes?
Yeah, so warfighters realize great communications in permissive environments today. We know that to take advantage of the data sharing that we endeavor to realize, that we're going to be dealing with disrupted communication. So we need to think about how can we leverage all of the communication links available to warfighters and really be dynamic and flexible in how we move data around. And then also often we'll have to operate without those communications. So how do we provision for those realities as well?
And so how does that change when you talk about some of those obstacles? What's different about JADC2 about how military systems have been set up now, and how do you overcome some of those obstacles, like jamming, for example?
Right. So we have those point-to-point solutions today. What we need to move towards is more of a flexibility and a AI, ML enabled jumping capability, self-healing networks. How do we, just like your cell phone, when you're talking on your phone, it can be on 5G and then you get to your house and it jumps to Wi-Fi, but your call doesn't drop. We need to provide those kinds of flexible solutions to warfighters today. And then we need to have protocols. So if I have high bandwidth, I can ship all of this data to my partners, or if I don't have much bandwidth, what is the most important information to push to those operational partners today?
And you talked about allies. That seems to be one of the key points. The further along you get into any discussion with JADC2, how does data sharing help improve joint operations?
Well, today we do everything with allies, and that will continue. And so, but now it's mostly on whether it be Merc chat or phone calls or face-to-face interactions. So how do we provide common situational awareness through data sharing to our allies so that we're all on the same page, but it's not a human on the loop, it's more of a human, or in the loop, it's more of a human on the loop. So we all have common SA without actually having to verbally communicate it. So we all see the same picture. And that's really where we need to go with JADC2 as it relates to our allies.
If you'd like to catch our next podcast, visit defensenews.com/events. Recruiting ads. Love them or hate them, they work. This one, called Freedom Isn't Free, is from the 1980s.
I'm from a town where things are as good as they come. And it's pictured in my mind just as clear as the midday sun. Now I'm out here in the darkness and the rain is coming down. Never was like this in my hometown. My hometown is not like this, but that's all right with me. See, I'm out here from my hometown, 'cause freedom isn't free.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.